Okay, welcome to part 2. We had to split this video in half, and so we'll have a part 3 after this one. We're going to delve into kind of some more modern day ideas of witches. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for coming. Over time, the perception of witchcraft began to shift, and it became more associated with benign practices and the celebration of nature and spirituality, which is kind of more of where it was originally. Now, modern day witchcraft has evolved into a diverse and multifaceted practice. The rise of Wicca and other forms of modern witchcraft has led to a resurgence of interest in ancient traditions and rituals. These practices are often focused on nature worship, healing, and personal empowerment, and they are practiced by people of various backgrounds and beliefs. In modern times, witches are pretty popular. They are in media often, and they can be depicted as either benevolent healers, malevolent sorcerers, depending on the context. So you got like Hocus Pocus, evil witches. But in the second one, you get introduced to, and spoilers if you haven't seen Hocus Pocus 2, you should. It was very good. You have the three girls who, same kind of idea, coven and everything, but they're good. So it really has to do with the individual, not the practices. And there are various fairy tales that contribute to the enduring fascination with witchcraft, right? You got Evil Queen Snow White. She's doing witchcraft, essentially, or at least what is now the modern perception of witchcraft in fairy tale style. All right, so now we're going to talk about the appearance of the witch. Okay, now, and we've talked before, I do my makeup based off of what we're talking about. And mine is, today's, I got a little darker than I usually would, but it is pretty natural for the most part because these were regular people. When you get down to the base idea of a witch, because I looked up witch makeup ideas, and a lot of it had the smoky, like, mask face, dripping. It was almost kind of like that Viking sort of thing, and maybe witches in Viking cultures wore that sort of makeup, but for the most part, witches were just normal people doing educated things. The appearance of a witch has evolved significantly. It's gone, and across cultures too. In ancient times, witches were often depicted as wise women and healers, so normal people who use their knowledge of herbs and natural remedies to help their communities. And these early witches were respected and revered for their skills. And then you got Christianity and the whole witch hunting thing happening, and the perception switches. It changes dramatically. They become associated with the devil, evil forces, and this shift in perception changes how they are now perceived and how they look. In some ways, they're kind of that boogeyman who's hiding in plain sight. So they would look normal, but then you get the additions of them being the old hag. And by the Renaissance period, it's become very sinister. Artists like Albrecht Dürer played a significant role in shaping the modern perception of witches. His engravings depicted witches as either young and alluring or old and hideous. You have two sides of the spectrum. You have got a seductress or an old evil hag. The hideous one would often have features like warts, crooked noses, wild hair, and these images became the basis for the stereotypical witch appearance that is still recognized today. In popular culture, witches are often portrayed as old, haggard women wearing pointy hats and riding broomsticks. In fact, my husband and I, we were watching Halloween shorts on Halloween night, and the Disney one with the three Donald's nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and they had that old witch who helps them prank or stuff. And, she had wild orange hair kind of sticking out all straw-like and the long nose and, kind of what the Halloween witch has become. And it has become popularized by modern media, fairy tales, folklore, and, that's the way they are perceived now, except for people are kind of now reclaiming the idea of what a witch is. We have what I call now the Halloween witch, which is the old haggard, evil hag with the, words and stuff. And then you get into other media where the witch is the seductress type, and you've got the good witch, and it's just, witches are now no longer just a one thing. They're actually as diverse as people at this point, right? Because they are people. And it's important to note that the historical appearance of witches varied widely depending on the culture and religious context. We're going to talk about famous witches. So throughout history, there have been several witches becoming well known either through legend, literature, historical records, and here are some of the most famous witches. And in our next video, the part 2 of this one, our jack-o'-lantern one didn't have a part 2 because it was all just very focused on this one individual, but there have been several witches through history, folklore, mythology, and we're just going to touch a couple stories in our next video. There are some individuals I want to do like a focused deep dive into, like Morgan Le Fay, King Arthur. That woman was petty. I haven't seen her done according to the way she was written. And King Arthur is an interesting story because it's changed throughout time. People have added on to it, changed things, but they've never really quite represented Morgana the way that she was represented in original text. And so I want to do a focused one on that because I'm writing a King Arthur story, and I did a lot of research, and she was petty, really petty. And that's why everything happened. Anyway, and then there's Lilith. According to Jewish mythology, Lilith was the first woman created by God and is often associated with night, demons, and unbridled sexuality. We've also got historical figures. There was Isobel Gowdy, a Scottish woman from the 17th century who confessed to being a witch, providing detailed accounts of her supposed witchcraft practices. And we're kind of going to talk a little more about her. We have also Aradia, the central figure in the 19th century book Aradia, or the Gospel of the Witches by Charles Leland. And Aradia is said to be the daughter of the goddess Diana and Lucifer. So we're kind of doing crossovers with mythologies on that one. And not quite historical, but in a book, we have people who are accused of being witches. And one of these figures is one of my absolute favorite historical people. And one of them is Joan of Arc. Like, I love this woman. I admire her so much. And this was the French heroine who was accused of witchcraft by the English and was executed in 1431. We'll probably maybe do a video on her also, just because I do love her, but I haven't been able to do a whole lot of research on her, and that would give me the opportunity to learn more. There's also Anne Boleyn. Probably maybe heard of her also. She was the second wife of King Henry and was accused of witchcraft and other charges, leading to her execution in 1536. And then there's Catherine Monovoisin. This is a French fortune teller and alleged witch involved in the infamous affair of the poisons in the late 17th century. And I'm curious about that one, so we might do a little deep dive in that also, because the affair of the poisons sounds really intriguing. Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about the history of the modern witch, at least Western modern witch, we're going to kind of delve into the developed modern day types of witches. And maybe as we talk through these, you can resonate with one. I do. I don't consider myself a witch, but first we have Green Witch. This witch focuses on nature, plants, and herbalism. They are drawn to green and see gardens, forests, and the wild as a sanctuary. They work with elements and spirits and are able to use the energy of their surroundings and natural sources. And this is one that I resonate with, right? So I have a garden. I grew up in the forest. I love green. So this one calls to me. If I were to be a witch, this is probably the one that I would subscribe to and practice. Then you have the kitchen witch, which is also associated with other kinds of, like the hearth witch, I think. They practice magic through cooking and household activities. They're known as, yes, the cottage or hearth witch also. They make magic in the kitchen using food and everyday items. They center their energy through making magical meals and a sacred home space. I could also probably have some resonance with this also. They work with kitchen gods, household fairies, and ancestors. Traditionally, these witches practice their magic quietly while people turned to religion. Now, the hedge witch is interesting. This person or this witch works with the spirit world and shamanic techniques. They are a symbolic hedge rider, able to cross between this world and the spirit world, and they use herbs, but their main focus is the veil between human and spirit. Then you've got the hereditary witch, which inherits their practice from family traditions. They are the ones whose magical practice stems from generations of knowledge. Then you've got eclectic witch. They draw from various traditions to create a personalized practice. They practice rituals, cast spells, and believe in different things from various traditions. Elemental witch, they work with the elements, earth, air, fire, and water. Cosmic witch, they use astrology and celestial bodies in their practice, and they long to go home among the stars. They love astrology, astronomy, and aeronautics or air travel. Then you've got the sea witch, not to be confused with the evil sea witch Ursula. They draw power from the ocean and water. They make magic by the seashore and are able to center their energy by the ocean. They can use it to heal, protect, clean, draw abundance, and more. Then you have solitary witch. I wanted to say solidarity. That's not the word. They practice alone rather in a group or coven. And that's probably something I would do. I am an introvert. I wouldn't do it in a group. Okay. You also have traditional witch. They follow old ways and practice. Their practices are rooted in folklore. They kind of mirror the folktale witches, tailoring their craft to their interpretation, and often use and study folklore, especially in their local area. So if they're from Scotland, they would probably use their Scottish heritage and culture and the folklore there to kind of shape their practice. Then you have the Wiccan witch. They follow the Wiccan religion with specific rituals and ethics. Crystal witch, they use their crystals and gemstones, and you can probably, like I've gone online because I love gems. I even have some in the back here, and they all represent something and have powers to draw energy and things like that, and it's actually pretty cool. There's your fairy witch. They work with fairies and nature spirits. And they're like the green witch, according to what I've got here in my research. But they center their practice on fairies, from whom some say they receive their powers. Urban witches, this is more of a modern take on practicing magic, and they do so in their urban environment, drawing magic from the city, using energy more than herbs, and they consider their environment as a living, breathing thing, even though you've got, skyscrapers and cars and things like that. I've been talking a long time, more than I usually do. My mouth is getting tired. We have secular witches. They practice without religious or spiritual beliefs. Ceremonial witches, they elaborate rituals and ceremonies. You got the Dianic witch. They're feminist spirituality and the worship of the goddess. Hearth witch, we kind of talked about, similar to the kitchen witch, but they kind of have a broader focus on the home. Tech witches, this one's kind of cool. It incorporates technology and modern tools into their practice. They believe that modern devices have their own gods, and they embrace this and use them as a part of their practice. And you know what? I wouldn't say that I don't sometimes believe this. Sometimes technology has a mind of its own, and it just does its own thing despite what you think it should or want it to. There's the art witch. They use art and creativity Music witch, similar. They use music and sound in their magical practices, and music permeates every aspect of their lives. They believe that every instrument is ruled by a different element and magical histories. The notes, tempo, and other musicality are used in spellcasting. That's probably the one my husband would do. He spent several years getting his music degree. Now, we also have the Shadow Witch, who works with shadows and the darker aspects of the self. And this one can be kind of controversial because it's almost a duality thing, and you can kind of ride a fine line with it, as far as I've been able to understand. Lunar witches focus on the moon and its phases, and which are essential to rituals and spellcasting, and they feel most alive at night. And this would have been my teenage self. I have insomnia, so sleep's not a thing. And they may also use herbs and tools linked to the moon, like mirrors, jasmine, moonflowers, and moonstones. Then you've got the solar witch, opposite, right? It draws power from the sun and its cycles. They harness the sun's energy, preferring to do their work during the day and incorporate the seasons in their magical practice. They love to sunbathe and be out to recharge, and they like to make sun tea, solar water, and using herbs and crystals that link to the sun. This would not be me. I'm a Leo, so you would think that I would love the sun, but sometimes. Okay, we're almost done. There are several witches. Like, there's a witch type for everything, and I just wanted to kind of try to cover as much as I could. And there's also now the coven witch, and this is something that we would probably be a little more familiar with. They choose to be initiated into a coven, which they usually follow a certain tradition and follow, in many cases, with a religion. Then you have your healing witch, who heal people, animals, themselves, and the earth. They may practice magic, medicinal herbalism, folk remedies, Reiki, cellular regeneration, rituals, as well as health and fitness. Then you have your divination witch. Healing and divination were two of the really popular things that you would get from witch practices. And they use tarot cards or oracle cards. I guess they have two names. Runes and study ancient forms of divination. I might be misunderstanding tarot or oracle. I don't know if they're the same thing or if they're two different types of cards. If you know, let me know in the comments below. Then you have gray witches. They classify themselves as being between good and dark. So it's kind of a little like the shadow, where they straddle between being moral and immoral. And in fact, I might be mixing the two up. Shadow just might be shadows, but gray witches for sure straddle between the line of good and dark. And they may hex people or use magic to stand up for others, even if it means using morally gray magic. And then you have your pagan witch. They believe in the old ways of paganism. They incorporate the old pagan gods and goddesses. They'll have altars and shrines, invoke the god's favor, depending on what pantheon they believe in, and call upon the Green Man, who is a very interesting character. We might do another dive on him, or a dive on him. They can also follow a specific pagan tradition like Celtic, Norse, Hellenic, Egyptian. There's several. And these are kind of just a cursory, quick, like, there's these type of witches. This is kind of what they're about. But if you really want to understand it, do your own research. I hope I didn't misrepresent anyone. I think that I got it right for the most part. The only one I'm a little worried about is the shadow witch. Many types of witches. They reflect the diverse and adaptable nature of modern witchcraft, allowing practitioners to find a path that resonates with their personal beliefs and interests. So the true nature of a witch is a fluid concept. It's been shaped by history, culture, individual perspective, but traditionally they were seen as people, often women, who possess supernatural powers. This view could be either positive or negative depending on the cultural context and into independent thinking. Now, in modern times, like we kind of mentioned before, the image of the witch has been reclaimed by many. Contemporary witchcraft, often linked with practice of Wicca, but not always. They focus on nature worship, personal empowerment, and healing. And modern witches often see themselves as spiritual practitioners who honor the cycle of nature, seek balance and harmony in their lives. So the true nature of a witch is complex and it varies widely. It's very independent, very personal, depending on the person who is practicing it and the way their environment has shaped them and their beliefs. In pop culture, we have a lot of witches. In classical literature, we have the Weird Sisters and Macbeth. The three witches are iconic for their prophecy that sets the tragic events of the play into motion, and their eerie presence and cryptic rhymes have made them unforgettable. We talked about Circe's, who turned Odysseus' men into pigs. We've got the witch in the Chronicles of Narnia, the White Witch, also known as Jadis. She rules Narnia until the kids in the stories save Narnia, along with Aslan. Got Hermione Granger in Harry Potter. Though she's a witch in training, Hermione is actually one of the most famous young witches in contemporary literature and also modern media, known for her intelligence, bravery, and loyalty. There's Elphaba and Wicked, which that's coming out, I think this month, November. I hope it's good. I really love the music. I was in high school when all of that blew into our lives, and it was amazing. I heard the novel's not as great, but I haven't read it, so I don't have an opinion. But in film, The Wicked Witch of the West and The Wizard of Oz, she was portrayed by Margaret Hamilton and was actually really good in her role. She's known for her green skin, pointy hat, and the famous line, "I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too." That is not a good witch voice, but I tried. We got Bellatrix Lestrange from Harry Potter, played by Helena Bonham Carter. She's one of the most powerful and feared Death Eaters in the series. Then there's the Grand High Witch from The Witches, Angelica Huston's portrayal of the villainous witch in Roald Dahl's adaptation. And if it's the same movie I'm thinking, they did a remake with Anne Hathaway, who also did very well. Sabrina Spellman from Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I grew up watching that show on and off. We didn't actually have cable, so it was a little complicated, and I never saw anything in progression, but I got some of it. Melissa Joan Hart brought this teenage witch to life, and it was a lot of fun. Very different than the recent Sabrina remake they did. And then, of course, you have the Sanderson sisters in Hocus Pocus. You got Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy, I don't know about her last name, Najimai? I should know how to say her last name. I'm actually disappointed in myself. But anyway, they play the three witches who are accidentally resurrected in modern day Salem. And of course, you've got the TV series of Game of Thrones. There's Melisandre. In Supernatural, there's Rowena. In Witches of East End, you got Joanna Beauchamp. Then you've got the new Sabrina. And then music and fashion. This one's interesting. We've got witchy aesthetics. This has influenced fashion and music. Stevie Nicks on Fleetwood Mac, often referred to as the White Witch, embraces a bohemian mystical style that many fans associate with witchcraft. In fact, she kind of has a very similar vibe. Aurora, I believe is her name. That ethereal voice. Very White Witch feeling. I never thought of that until this moment, but there it is. So in pop culture, witches have transformed from feared outcasts to celebrated icons and of individuality, and their allure continues to captivate audiences, blending old myths with new interpretations. Okay, now this is already a long video, so I'm not going to go into other things like enemies, friends. We might touch on that in the next video, but my husband's gonna be home any minute and I gotta stop doing this one, so part 2 is gonna be filmed at another point of time, but we're gonna talk about the intrigue and why people like witches real quick. That's where we're gonna end, because again, I'm at almost an hour at this point, and hopefully I'll be able to cut it down. Okay, so there's something truly captivating about witches. They have fascinated people for centuries, and some of the reasons are because of the mystery and power. Witches often represent the unknown and the mystical. Their perceived ability to harness supernatural forces gives them an aura of power and mystery that captivates people's imaginations. There's also the factor of rebellion and independence. Historically, witches were often women who lived on the fringes of society, embodying a sense of rebellion and independence. They were seen as challenging the status quo, which can be both frightening and alluring. We've also got the cultural archetype. Witches are deeply embedded in cultural myths and folklore. They appear as powerful figures in tales from various cultures, representing both the fear of the unknown and the potential for transformation and change. There's also empowerment. In modern times, the image of the witch has been reclaimed as a symbol of female empowerment. You have figures like Hermione Granger, the Sanderson sisters. They show themselves as powerful, intelligent, and independent people, which resonates with contemporary values. And then there's ritual and tradition. Witchcraft is often associated with ancient rituals and a connection to nature, and that's actually something that millennials are very much in tune with at this moment in time. A lot of us are starting gardens for a reason, and it's not just because we can't afford a midlife crisis. This return to traditional practices and the emphasis on harmony with the natural world can be very appealing in a fast-paced modern society, and that's part of why I love my garden so much. I can go out, slow down, take a breath, put my fingers in the dirt, look at my pretty vegetables and flowers, and just be happy that I've had a hand in creating something that is a part of nature. And then, of course, you have the entertainment factor. From Shakespeare's Macbeth to the Harry Potter series, witches have provided endless material for captivating stories. Their complex characters and the dramatic possibilities of their powers make them perfect for literature, film, and television. I even wrote a book once. I'm going to relaunch a series that I have written based on fairy tales. I've become a better writer, and I want to clean them up, kind of bring them up to date to where I am as a creator. And one of the books actually is about the Hansel and Gretel witch, at least in this story. It takes a lot of creative liberties, but it was really amazing because I had someone send me a message saying how much that story meant to them because of the witch and what she went through in her empowerment. And it meant a whole lot to me, and it was a really cool thing. So witches are very powerful, whether you take them as a symbol of what you need in your life or as a literal practice to express yourself and what you believe. And it's really cool. I love witches. They're fun and amazing and all kinds of crazy cool. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I am actually going to be filming part 2 later because I'm not going to do it while my husband is home. Hopefully he's not already here. I'm very self-conscious. I have imposter syndrome and I feel really weird about this, but it's fun for me and I enjoy it. So I hope you enjoyed it too. And if you want to see the next video, make sure that you are making a point to get the notifications because we will be talking about some witches and their stories, and it'll be a lot of fun. All right, I hope you have a great day. Do good things in the world, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.